Australia. It is Friday morning at 5:49 a.m. I figure this is the best time for me and my schedule to pop out one of these long form podcasts. Give a shout out to my hometown too, Youngstown. We are the city of champions. Boom Boom Mancini, Kelly the Ghost Pavlik, and for some reason, you know how it is in towns. Whenever there's somebody famous that's from a neighboring area and it's a small place, you take them too. So we also stake claim to Ernie Shavers, Henry Arroyo as well. So boxing, if you know boxing, you know Youngstown. This is episode 2 of the Johnny Says Boxing podcast. And if you could read the title and the description, that's going to be our premise of rundowns. If there's anything that you want to add in, just comment while we're live, and then we could talk about that too. But the crux of today's chat are going to be, they had that press conference today for Ngannou versus Fury. And generally on my channel, I don't like to cover crossover fights in terms of MMA and boxing. But the topic of there's a new WBC belt just for this event to commemorate this event, I want to talk about that. It's called the Riyadh belt. It's where the fight's being held. I want to hear your opinion on how you feel about that. We're also going to talk about a potential matchup. It looks like contracts are being settled between Thurman and Boots Ennis, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And then also your opinion on crossover matches. I know from the MMA side, the MMA community, the narrative there is whenever there's a big MMA star, Conor, versus a big boxing star, Floyd, it's great for both sports. You go to the MMA forums at the time, all positive from the MMA side. Boxing, not so much. This is for a few reasons. Boxing's an older sport, and I think it just has a bit more purists. I want to know what you guys think. I'll tell you my opinion. That's something you will get my opinion on. I don't really like doing opinion pieces on fighters or past losses, but something like that, the goings-on of the politics of a sport, I'll be very opinionated on it. Let's talk about October 28th. The WBC has announced that fight, Fury versus Ngannou, is going to be on ESPN pay-per-view. And I wanted to hear your opinion on the new belt. What's your take on this? That I posted this in our Facebook group this morning before going live. Once again, if you're not there, go join it. Boxing News Today, we're up to 70,000 people. It's a place to have ongoing chats such as this one. And one of the commenters who were defending the belt was talking about, well, yeah, it's a nice gesture, this Riyadh Championship belt for the winner to commemorate this event. Okay, what event? I mean, it's under boxing rules, but it's a cash grab. And from a fan's perspective, for the WBC to act as if the fans are not in tune with how transparent they're actually being, that's offensive. To act like we need to commemorate Ngannou versus Fury with the new belt, I mean, if you're on that side, you're probably also a fan of the UFC doing the BMF belt, the bad motherfucker belt for every, you got guys like Masvidal. I know he fought for it. I used to be really up to date with UFC, but it's a lot of road warriors. It's a lot of veterans to commemorate their career, BMF. But it's not like shiny young fighters with glossy records who are actually at that stage of the career the baddest. So to think that the WBC stepped in, get more eyes on the event, the same announcement that it's going to be on ESPN pay-per-view, the same announcement that Riyadh is offering a new WBC belt to the winner. You give the mic to Tyson, you give the mic to Francis. It's like, come on, man. The fans, I don't know if I'm going to watch it. I'm still torn. I really don't get too much as a fan out of the crossover fights. I watched Conor versus Floyd. I thought that was intriguing. If we remember when that fight took place, Conor was invincible in the UFC, and Floyd obviously still, has never lost. This fight, I'm not an Ngannou fan. I'm from Northeast Ohio. So when he fought Stipe Miocic twice, Stipe beat him, and he has holes in his MMA game, and his striking isn't technical. He's just a big brute, and I love his backstory. Okay, I get it. I'm sympathetic. I'm empathetic. I'm a, hopeless romantic as well. He came from the mines. He escaped extreme living conditions to overcome all this and become one of the most popular athletes on the planet. I get all that. As a fan, if I want to watch that, I'll watch it ESPN 30 for 30. okay? And that's fine. Netflix has a cool new series too, Untold. Make it on that. But for boxing, for new belts, for Tyson Fury, for the heavyweight division to be held up, I mean, I don't know where I definitely I'm not a fan of it. So we'll cover that again and we'll talk about it. I want to know what you think. What do you guys think about this news with Boots, Ennis, and Thurman? I have a little blog pulled up because, damn, you go inactive as a fighter in boxing. This is why I love boxing, man, because the fans will let you know about it. There's not a lot of honey dicking going on in boxing by the fans, meaning go to MMA forums right now. You got guys dressing like Sean O'Malley dyeing their hair. You got grown men painting their fingernails. It's very sort of culty over the MMA forum groups. Boxing, though, the boys will let you know about it if you're talking too much shit and you haven't fought. So I have an article pulled up, and I'm not reading the article. That shit's boring. I like reading the comments. So the article is the potential matchup between Keith Thurman and Boots Ennis. We know Boots' shiny record, 31-0, 28 knockouts. The thing about Thurman, which every now and then when news like this comes out, because he's been so inactive, I have to go remind myself and watch highlights of Thurman to remind myself, oh, the kid is a dog. Don't sleep on Keith. The kid could pop. His nickname's one time for a reason. But due to his inactivity, due to not fighting and boxing being a sport of what have you done for me lately, I mean, you get comments such as this. So the article reads about what's going on. The article mentions how inactive he was going into the Manny fight. And then I didn't know about this. So Thurman might as well take the fight with Boots. So Thurman hasn't fought in 18 months. But before the Manny fight in 2019, Thurman hadn't fought in 31 months. Do your math. 31, 41, 49. It's early. 49 months. So in 49 months, he's fought twice. There's only 12 months in a year. So in almost 3 years, and over 3 years. And this is why you get comments such as this, because we forget how good these guys are. These are from fans of the Boxing Scene website. I'm reading the comments on this article. One time really realizes if he wants a bigger payday, he has to get knocked out to do it. And this, remember guys, these are the comments on the section of Boots versus Thurman. So this is what one fan says. Another fan, Keith, once upon a time, Thurman is finished at this point. He was a good fighter several years ago who would have given any top welterweight a tough night. He's had too much inactivity, and I'm unsure if he can mount a proper comeback at this point. Leo Ortiz, whoever you are, Keith once upon a time Thurman is hilarious. If he made that up, cheers to that guy. Here's another one. I think Thurman almost needs to start again and fight a couple of easy fights to just get back into it. He's been out of it so long. It's crazy to fight a top-level fighter until he has, only in my opinion. We'll talk. Let's talk about that nature in boxing too in a second. I want to read one more. You know what? That'll be it. I don't want to read that one. That guy wrote a paragraph. But what is your thoughts on tune-up fights? Because yesterday we posed the question of Errol Spence Jr. versus Crawford and why I feel a tune-up fight isn't required in that sense. I want to see that fight take place at 160, not 47 or 54. That 160 excites me. Watch that video if you haven't seen it. But why do we feel a tune-up fight is necessary if the fighter's not calling for it? Where is that? If that's true, that means the psychosis or the psychopathy of the fandom of boxing means that we feel if our word is born, if word is bond, 90s kid, flip, mo, squaw, word, bond. If our word is bond there, then we know more than the fighter. Then that means that he needs a tune-up fight. Even though it's not like Thurman's like, I want a tune-up fight, then I want this. I wonder where that started, the etymology of even using tune-up fights, because I guarantee it started fighters asking for them. I guarantee it started way back in the day when fighters were almost made as pawns by their boxing managers and agents and were making them fight these fights that they didn't want to fight. I'm talking like probably 40s, 50s, 60s. I could be wrong. I have to do some research on that. This is just speculation based on logic. And it's like, then if I get hurt in a fight, I'm a boxer in the 1950s, and my camp is using me as a cash mule. I think tune-ups serve a purpose, but this era boxing clowns boxers. Yes, this is my exact point. Do you think that the tune-up fight started back in the day as a way for the fighter to protect himself from a lot of damage? So let me know, calling them ducks. That is anybody who's ever laced them up, been in a fight, not a fucking street fight, not out with the boys at the bar. Anyone could punch somebody, in a street fight. Anyone who's ever sparred, go to your local boxing gym. You wouldn't be using the word ducks because any guy who knows what it's like to get punched, punch back, not going to use the word ducks because these guys aren't ducking people. It might happen in rare cases if somebody is prolonged in their career and protecting a glossy record. But the idea that any fighter is scared of any other fighter is horseshit. We're all, a lot of us are, I don't want to, I have 3 sisters at home, so I don't want to just say we're all men here, but chances are my sisters aren't watching this. So a man isn't going to be afraid of another man, especially if he's in this an athlete. There's no such thing as fear. And then if you want to get hippie about it, the word fear is a construct that if you do any personal development courses, if you read about, these get rich quick schemes, the word fear isn't even used because it's sort of like a crutch that people who choose not to develop themselves will use as like an excuse. So to think that word fear comes into the sport of combat is horseshit. I don't buy that. The tune-up fight though thing is like, when did fans now speak on fighters' behalf? And I don't agree. I don't think Thurman needs a tune-up fight. This dude is at a stage in his career. He wants big fights, and it's his choice. If we watch him fight Boots and he gets picked apart, what will we say? Well, the Thurman fans, the Thurman haters will say he needed a tune-up fight, and the Ennis fans will keep saying what Ennis fans keep saying. He's great. More undefeated fights, and more big fights for him. I think it's a win-win for both fighters. I want to see that fight. It's a great litmus test for both guys, where they are in their careers. I like crossroad fights. Those are the intriguing ones for me. When I wish there were more of these crossroad fights, because this is a perfect one. When a fighter who had been to the top still doesn't really think he's ever reached his full potential, and you have a fighter that is trying to get to the top. I think they need each other. Same, man. Shop Talk, Convo Mac, same. I think that it's great for the sport if that fight happens. And what they're probably going to do is, it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do with Bud about vacating belts, and then Ennis at 47, and then try to build that up. I mean, because it's not too far-fetched that Thurman wants that shine. Thurman's great. Say what you want about Keith. I like Keith on the mic. I like that Keith kind of tries a lot on the mic, but when I heard him flowing, you could tell as a young boy he listened to a lot of Ali. And I see Keith Thurman as a young kid, and this is a compliment. When I look at people, when I look at maybe a stranger today, when you guys are out in your normal life, and somebody maybe doesn't say excuse me, or somebody cuts you off, how I get through that so I don't get angry. I live a life of no anger. It's one of my key rules is don't live with stress. Is when that person cuts me off or they do me wrong, I always instantly think this person's a little kid. Or at one time, their mom and dad loved them. They were a little child. When I look at Thurman, and this is much more, childlike with when he's on the mic, I'm like, Keith Thurman's like 9 years old right now. He's tapping into that childlike spirit, and I like that about Thurman. And, fans, I guess we're just harsh in the boxing community because we also like to equate shit talk with productivity. And I understand that because there's a line of when you're shit talking or you're selling a fight, then we use this side productivity as a gauge for credibility. And there's like this equation nobody talks about in the media. It's like, why are we shit talking Thurman? Oh, he talks too much. He hasn't fought enough. All right, what's the real meaning of all that? Because there is truth to that. Oh, we feel he's lacking credibility at the moment. But let Thurman fight Boots and let him win by a knockout. He would become a star because it's the same thing that happened with Conor. If Conor in MMA, when he was predicting rounds, when he starched Aldo and did exactly what he said he was going to do in the first round, and that video comes out before Conor walks out of him shadow boxing that counter left, if he doesn't do that, he doesn't become a star. He becomes a star because he backed up what he said, and I think that sort of line could come together if we do see this Ennis Thurman fight. I get too excited before shit even gets signed. You guys have no idea how many times I've gotten so hype about a potential fight and it just doesn't happen. So that's my beef with boxing is the fights that sometimes, and it's your beef as well if you know about the sport, they just don't happen. I hope that fight happens right now. I hope it's next for both guys. And that's a good segue. That's a good segue to one of the next talking points I wanted to get to was, do you think that belts matter for boxing? Because what we started this on, Riyadh belt, the belt for Ngannou and Francis. We talked about the BMF belt in UFC, and we know both of these sort of approaches by the powers that be are cash grabs. It adds weight and it adds sort of, in their opinion, selling points to sell the fights. Now, where did they get this thought from? Because if I think about some of my favorite fights in boxing, Arturo Gatti versus Mickey Ward 1, Gatti versus Ward 2, Gatti versus Ward 3. The whole trilogy. We tuned in. Fight of the year. How many belts did they fight for? Those fights were for no belts. Granted, people didn't know what they were getting into. In the first one, it was what? The fight happened in Connecticut on. Hold on, I want to be exact with that. The Mohican Sun, Montevideo, Connecticut, May 18th, 2002. And the next two were at the Atlantic City Boardwalk, and I got to see a fight there. I love that venue. If you ever have an opportunity to go to the Boardwalk in Atlantic City, I got to see Jermaine Taylor versus Kelly Pavlik 1 there. 5,000 people at the time. I think it might have been called the Pearl. What was it called? It doesn't say, but that's a great venue. Now back to the Gotti Ward thing. No belts were on the line. Granted, the first fight, we didn't expect it to be a trilogy. We didn't know we were getting into one of the greatest trilogies of all time. The second fight, though, we did. Same with the third. Still no belts. We still tuned in. Still two of the best fights. So in this day and age of social media, of clicks, of viewership, wanting eyes on, is that really good for the sport? And is the Fury and Ngannou thing even the sport? So in some instances, belts matter, and sometimes they don't. It depends on the fighters. 100%. I heard a boxer talking about this on a podcast recently. It might have been Crawford when he was on Rogan, because Crawford said, I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was talking about how the only belt that he really respected was the ring. I didn't know that all the other belts, they have to pay for them. So the money comes out of their purse to have the belts. So it really matters a lot for the promoters, which is crazy. Kudos to Bud, man, for talking up about this stuff, because I grew up, I never made it to the pro level. I didn't even get past 15 years old of boxing. You know, my parents, everybody in my hometown grows up boxing, and then you get to a point where you see, I was not going to go anywhere in boxing. I was a little short white kid, slow, but they don't tell you about these things. You have to sell tables once you get to like the amateurs and pro level, you sell tables. But I've interviewed boxers for the last 10 years. I mean, in this book, I have Evander Holyfield. In my first book, I've interviewed Holyfield, Layla Ali. My point is for bringing this up is that in all these interviews I've done, Evander Holyfield, Chapter 9, in all these interviews I've done, I've never, maybe because I never asked, but I never once heard a fighter talk about that side of the game, the corruption of boxing with the belts and how they have to pay for the belts and how it's just sort of like a signifier to get eyes on that specific fight. But I thought that when I heard Bud talk down on it, that shocked me, because I equated Undisputed with the belts. I didn't, and that's my ignorance. Until I heard Bud talk about it, I didn't really think about Undisputed as just the accomplishment of man, meaning that there's one human ever at this moment who's undisputed. Now, it's not like I want to be undisputed to show off my belt. Hey, I got this new car. Let me put it on Instagram. No. This was and I should have known that, but I guess those two things got convoluted over the years, belts and titles. It's just interesting, guys. I appreciate everyone tuning in. I want to know your thoughts. This is only the second one of these I've done. I'm going to continue. The one thing about me, once you get to know me, is I'm persistent and I'm ethical. And even though there's only 3 of us watching, I plan on doing these every day, and I'll take your feedback too. Whatever you guys think to make this better. I'm learning the tech side of stuff. I only really started kicking this YouTube off about 3-4 months ago, and it's slowly growing. I appreciate you guys. Thank you. I appreciate the feedback, man. You know your boxing. So any feedback or any advice or insights, man, let me know. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned to the channel. I'll be doing a bunch of videos today.